One of the policymakers tasked with making those difficult decisions is DFL Senator John Marty, chair of the Senate Finance Committee. Senator, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, Senator, MMB just released that updated budget forecast. What were your main takeaways?
Sure. Well, the good news is that the budget we have, including for the biennium we're setting the budget for right now, has enough money to cover everything. The bad news is, yes, as the out biennium, the numbers we first saw in November shows that we have a budget issue we did have to address. And that's something we can address now. Minnesota is one of a handful of states that forecast not just 2 years out, but actually looks 4 years out. And we try and address the 4-year trends so that when we put together a budget 2 years ago, we addressed the 4 years out so we'd have enough money to cover things in the next 4 years. Now we have to do that for the next 4 years, and I think that's very important. It's not good news. I mean, we're not on a sustainable thing right now, but I think it's one that's very doable. On its own, the trouble is there's so many outside factors that we can't address, largely federal.
Senator, have we faced a structural imbalance like this before? And if so, how did we counter that?
Sure. Well, first of all, structural imbalance, which means we're taking in less money in a biennium than we're spending, happens a lot of times. We had intentionally done that 2 years ago. When if you have a surplus in the bank, and we had a lot of extra money in the bank 2 years ago, if you want to ever spend that, you're going to have a structural imbalance. Because if you take in as much as you're putting out, you keep carrying that money over and over. So it gives an opportunity to do a lot of one-time spending, which makes a structural imbalance. And we set it up in such a way that we had money left over for the next 2-year cycle to help cover that and so on. So we're slowly slowing down the imbalance in there, and it was the direction it was going. The economy now, the projections are 4 years out, the trend is not the right direction, so we have to change that. But it's a lot easier to change it now than to wait till the last minute and try and do it.
Yeah, so talk to me about that. We've heard that there's a deficit on the horizon. Is it avoidable, or can we do work now to at least soften that?
Right, well, we have to address it at 4 years in the next biennium, 2 years from now. We have to address it if there's the problem that is there. Right now, what we can do is to help minimize it, make sure we're on a course that will correct that. And that's what we're trying to put together. That's a very challenging one in the political climate we're in, but we're planning to do that. We're trying to do that and finish the session in May when we're supposed to.
Senator, you mentioned that we can do things to minimize that. And, some people have heard that, special education and long-term care services, they're singled out as being those drivers behind that structural imbalance. And there are concerns that there may be cuts to those programs. What do you say to people who have fear around that?
Right. First of all, I very much share their fear. When it's easy to talk in budgeting circles, oh, these are numbers, we can cut this here and do this there and so on. It's very impersonal. But when you have people with severe disabilities, who have students with special education needs, you have growing number of people in long-term care because of aging population. A lot of those are trends we've known about for the last 10, 20 years. But that's growing, and it's definitely a big part of the budget and growing to be a bigger part. So when people say, oh, we can just cut money here, we'll change that, you got to realize there are real people's lives behind there. So I strongly share their concern and want to make sure that we're not doing deep cuts into the areas where people need more help, not less.
Senator, you mentioned some unknowns going into these planning years, and one word we've heard a lot is recession, at least on the federal level. So if the country were to face a recession, how would that impact us here?
Sure. Well, first of all, there are a couple of things. When I say that I think we could balance the budget problem we have here, what we have to look at is what's happening around us. And at the federal level, I think some would call it economic chaos. When you lay off perhaps hundreds of thousands of federal employees, it's not just a crisis for those families who have to pay the mortgage and everything else. It's a crisis for the overall economy when there are lots of people who are being hit that way. And most federal employees aren't in Washington, D.C. They're in Minnesota and the other states. So that'll have an impact. The tariffs, the uncertainty is hard on businesses, but the tariffs are likely to cause inflation and slow down the economy at the same time. How much and which tariffs, well, that changes week to week, so it throws chaos into business planning and investment stuff. And on top of that, some of the decisions in terms of expelling many immigrants from the country. We don't know which ones and how and what way, but if they really were to try not expelling 12 million undocumented people, but say 1 million people, that would have a huge impact on our agriculture sector, the people who work in the fields. It would have a huge impact in our nursing homes and long-term care facilities. It has huge impacts in parts of the economy. So all of those changes could throw one of them. I mean, economists can tell you what tariffs will do, but they don't know which tariffs are going to happen, how long they're going to last, what retaliation there is. But they can project that's going to make inflation go higher and slow down the economy and lead towards recessionary type of things. You put all those combinations together, and we don't know. I mean, I'm worried that recession is not the worst we could have. That we could have much worse than that, and we don't have experience in our lifetimes of that. So that would be new. And if that happens, if the federal government does that, and also if they cut, this is a long answer, but the other half of it is what they might do to budgets. If they cut housing funds, where we have a housing crisis right now, if they cut Medicaid, that would be a huge thing. It could multiply our problems. So all those things together, they won't throw Minnesota state budget into chaos. They'll throw 50 state budgets into chaos and could send the economy into a tailspin. So I'm saying whatever we do this spring and putting together a budget, I'm worried we may be coming back this fall to address federal problems that put the economy in big shape, big trouble.
You said there are all these unknowns that are causing potential chaos and that these decisions touch real lives. You know, how does it feel to be taking on this gigantic responsibility?
It's a lot of challenge here, and I mean, it can be very stressful, but the good news is I don't do it on my own. Nobody here does it on their own. We work together. It's clearly going to be a bipartisan process, and there are people with very strong feeling and strong opinions, so it will be challenging, but again, that's our job, is to try and bring it all together and come up with a budget.
That's right. The different voices are a strength.
Right.
How confident are you that the Senate can pass a budget before the end of the session?
I'm very hopeful we'll pass the budget before the end of the session. We basically have to pass a budget before July 1st, or you have government shutdown. We can do it. I want to avoid a special session. I want to make sure we get it done on time. Last 2 years ago was the first budget year where we didn't go into overtime in the last couple decades, I think, and I want to replicate that again. I feel we did good last time. I hope we can do the same here, but am I certain it's going to happen? No, there's too many uncertainties in this process, but I think I'm committed to it, and I think a lot of others are committed to it as well.
Where is your team in the process now?
Where are we right now? We're putting together what we call budget targets, which would allocate how much money goes into transportation, how much to education, to human services, to healthcare, all those things. We're trying to allocate what combinations of things we're going to do for revenue, for budget cuts, for everything else, and trying to figure out how to make it so we're on a curve to make sure the budget is stable on the way out. Again, that's outside of all the federal pressures, though, so anything we do, no matter how careful we do, federal government's powers dwarf us. And just one thing, with our budget for the next 2 years out, it's $6 billion in total numbers, but that counts inflation, which we're not going to cut things so that we can inflate them later. We're going to figure it out. So basically, we have a $2.4 billion problem over the next 4 years to balance. But Medicaid, the federal government provides, of our 65, 67, somewhere in there, $1 billion biennial budget, they provide over a 2-year period, just in Medicaid, about $17 billion. And if they take away even 10% of that, they're doubling our problem. I mean, this is a 4-year problem, so they're more than doubling our problem. And if they take away bigger chunks, which they're talking about massive cuts in Medicaid, that alone would do it. Put on top of that what they might do to education and everything else. And that's why I say we could have a huge, huge problem that even if we fix it now, we could be looking at it again this fall.
federal aside, what can we learn from our current situation here in Minnesota that we can use going forward?
Sure. Among other things is keep doing the things we've been doing right. I mean, the idea that we're only going to look 2 years out, which most states do, not 4 years out, I think that's important. We kept a strong budget reserve. We kept a balanced budget. We got AAA bond rating from all the bond houses, which is the best rating you can get, suggesting that they think we've been responsible in our budget, and we want to keep that up. So I think the thing I'd like to have us say is, one, let's keep doing what we've been doing right. Two, when there are things we see problems, let's address them right away instead of waiting till later.
Senator, any final thoughts on this?
I'm looking forward to we've got a lot of tough discussions ahead in the next couple months, and we're hoping we can make it happen.
Senator, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.